What's going on, ladies and gents? It's week 4 of Does Waiting Have a Purpose? We're in chapter 38, and there is so much stuff in this chapter that I wish I could share with you, but I can't because I only have 10 minutes, so I'm going to keep it tight. Before we get started, if you have any questions about anything we've gone through or what we're going to go through today, and again, I'm not going to cover everything, so if you've had some things you want me to cover and I don't cover it, just ask me a question about it or ask me about it in the comments below, and I'll do my best to get back to you with an answer. Okay, so here we go. Chapter 38, seemingly out of place. Chapter 37 leaves Joseph sold into slavery. Chapter 39 picks up exactly where that leaves off, yet chapter 38 is in the middle. It's standing in between 37 and 39, so we have to read it. So what is God's purpose of dropping this right in the middle where it doesn't seem to fit? Of course, he's trying to teach us how to focus on the right thing when we're going through. Now, we have a vantage point here that Joseph didn't have. Joseph, although he may have been thinking of his brothers and what they were going through, or what they weren't going through, because he was going through some difficulties, we have a vantage point of seeing what Judah went through, which was seemingly nothing. But you look at the names of the people and his children, all those names kind of set up the character of the man, and where he thought he had freedom, he had none. Now, Joseph had to ask for everything. He couldn't go where he wanted to go without asking permission. He didn't have money. He was someone's slave. Yet the place where Judah goes is called hiding place, and the friend that he finds there is named Liberty. It's very insightful to see the names of the people. His son's names, for instance, his wife's name, or her father's name, because it doesn't tell you her name, his wife's name, it tells you her father's name was Wealth and Prosperity. His son's name was Watcher, Mourning, and Petition. Now, the woman that he got for his first son was called Fruit. His son, the last son, was born in a place called Disappointment. This is just, God is trying to show you that even when you think you got liberty, if you're not following him, you don't have liberty. You just have a different kind of slavery. So Judah is the man trying to live God's life his way. He's going to pick the rules he's going to follow, and he's going to pick the rules he will ignore. And that's what this chapter is about. Although it doesn't mention Joseph at all, let me tell you that Joseph's, when we do finally get to Joseph in 39, the contrast between these two men's characters and the situations they were in. Judah was free, but he was enslaved to himself. This chapter is full of disobedience, disappointment, sexual immorality. Everything that God would tell him not to do, he just did what he wanted to do. Joseph is in a place where he has no freedom, and yet he is doing everything God has told him to do. Sometimes when you're in a comfortable spot, that's the worst place for you to be if God is not there with you, because you're not learning anything from God and you're not learning to depend on him. Paul said in the New Testament, I've learned in whatever situation I'm in to be content. Why? Because he was holding on to God. Joseph is in a place where he shouldn't find any contentment. Let me just read what Egypt, right? It's a Hebrew word, and the meaning of it is restraint, misery, tribulation, and distress. Again, restraint, misery, tribulation, and distress. In that situation, we would all, me included, would be saying, God, what's your problem? I ain't done nothing to get here. I ain't done a thing to get here. And yet, this is where I'm at. Where you at? See, that's what it's geared to do, is to have you arguing with God or finding errors in God. That ain't good. It doesn't breed faith. See, I told you before that without faith, it's impossible to please God. You have to have faith, and this is the training ground for faith. This is where that muscle of faith gets activated and gets matured and gets strengthened, to where the next time you go through something, you'll have this to rely on, to remember, no, I was in this. And God got me through it. He didn't abandon me. He was with me through it. In Judah's life, he's going through all this stuff, and there's no mention of God. The only mention of God is when God comes in to execute judgment on Judah's kids. And I know you might have questions like, well, why did God deal so quickly with Judah's children, but he didn't deal that quickly with Judah for what he did to Joseph? Great question. I got an answer, but I can't give it to you here because I'm focused on something else. So let me tell you that Joseph's life was difficult, but God was with him. And when we get to 39, you're going to see that God is always in it. Let me just tell you that the children's name that Judah called his name, his children, was watcher, mourner, and petition. None of those things say anything about God. Let me show you in chapter 41. We're going to jump ahead for a second. The names of Joseph's children. This is what he called them. In chapter 41, verse 51 and 52, it says, Joseph called the name of his firstborn Manasseh, which means forgetfulness. For God has made me forget all my toil and all my father's house. You see how he's not forgetting the struggle he went through, but the struggle is actually bringing him remembrance of, yeah, God got me through that. So it wasn't such a bad thing because God got me through it. Verse 52, his second son. And the name of his second son he called Ephraim, fruitfulness. For God has caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction. See, you can say that after you've gone through, when you've held on to God through the whole thing. You can do that because it's matured you. It's strengthened you in Christ because God has not gone anywhere. In Judah's life, God wasn't in there because he didn't ask him in. He didn't rely on him. It's funny that the place he went to was called hiding place. The man's name, his friend there, was called Liberty. The name of his wife's father, because it doesn't tell you her name, was Wealth and Prosperity. Brother, let me tell you that if you're in a place, sister, if you're in a place of comfort and God didn't put you there and you're not relying on him, it's going to end badly for you. Oh, you may enjoy it for the moment, but the payment is going to be due and you ain't got the funds to pay. Judah is in a place he should be happy and moving towards God. And he's not. He's just moving towards self. I'm going to live God's life my way. Joseph in a place of misery, and he's holding on to God. Holding on to God so much that it's not affecting him mentally as far as stressing. He ain't stressing. His children aren't dying. And he's not spreading anything that's harmful. He's continually having the character of Christ. So if I can bring these two things to a close as far as chapter 38, this is a man that shows the character of a man apart from God, trying to live God's life his way. Joseph shows the character of a man living in a miserable place, having the character of God because he's continually leaning on God, continually holding on to God. Guys, that's where your assignment is, to hold on to God. Your purpose, God's purpose, not yours. You have assignments in God's purpose. And if you fulfill your assignment, that doesn't affect God's purpose whether you do or not. Judah had an assignment. He does. God has a purpose in Judah's life, but Judah is not fulfilling any of his assignments. But God's purpose is still going to get done. And I can tell you in the New Testament, the last two children that came from Judah are in the line of Jesus. Those last two. Well, actually one. It mentions both, but only one of them. The one you would not expect. And it's not those kids. Let me see if I got the meaning of their names. I have it somewhere. I don't have it with me, and I'm running out of time. But let me tell you that the meaning of those kids' name, one of them is named Brilliant. Brilliant. These are the kids that came after. You read the last 2 verses of chapter 38, and that's where you find these 2 kids. One of them struggled to get out of the womb. One of them came out first. The other one pulled him back in and said, I'm coming out first. And there's a purpose for that. Find his name. You'll find it in the New Testament. You'll find him in both. You'll find it in Matthew, that tells you the genealogy of Joseph, and you'll find it in Luke, that tells you the genealogy of Mary. This is just awesome. He did not fulfill his assignment, and God's purpose still got done. But we're going to find a man that is completely sold out to God and willing to live for God in the most distressful place where you could be blaming God. He ain't blaming God for nothing. He knows who put him there. He said it. He said, my brothers meant this for evil, but God meant this for good. God is the author of where we go. As Christians, where we end up, the struggles we go through, God hasn't said, oh my God, something's going wrong. No, he sent you there. A friend of mine told me one time, you don't want to pray for God to deliver you from a situation that God delivered you into, because there's a lesson in there you need. So guys, my time is spent. Remember, if you have any questions about anything that we've gone over, just ask them in the comments and I'll get back to you with an answer. All right, guys. So next week, chapter 39 is next. Remember to stay strong, stay focused, stay encouraged, and stay safe. God bless.